is my infrastructure ready for this type of growth? Okay, not just my budget and how that's going to grow over time, but is my infrastructure, are my management processes going to be able to adapt to this growth in my overall storage volume? Are the systems that I have in place today going to be able to scale? Is it robust enough to address this volume of information? Looking at my data center over time, am I going to be able to scale up? Am I going to need to move into a different location? Or are the technologies coming down the pipe in the next few years going to be able to help me do more with less with the space that I have? One of the things that we talk about to customers about, and we hear a lot about with respect to backup and recovery, is backup is worthless, recovery is everything. And that's fundamentally true here, which is it doesn't matter if I put it into my archive, it doesn't matter if I put it into my different stores, but what I have to be able to do is get to that information to produce it on demand. I have to be able to recover it, I have to be able to retrieve it. And fundamental to that principle is protecting that information. So protecting the content itself as well as the systems so that in a timely manner, if by chance something happens, you'll be able to come back, bring that system back online and produce it in a timely manner so you can meet the conference requirements under FRCP or any other auditory requirements. As my archive grows over time, as my data stores grow over time, how am I going to be able to efficiently store all of that information? So there are a number of different methods to store that. I can put it onto tape, I can put it onto optical, I can put it onto primary, I can put it onto nearline disk. As Mr. Barron said earlier, a lot more people are moving over to disk, but there are some interesting technologies coming down the pipe that might be able to support the ability to keep certain things for a longer time on tape. Within the context of keeping things on disk, everybody understands the power considerations about keeping disks spinning in the future and just what's going to happen to my data center over time. So there are certain technologies out there in the marketplace that are going to continue to help you store the same amount of information on less amount of disk over time. Some of these are in the areas of RAID protection, redundancy protection within my disk system. A lot of organizations try to do this technology, the redundancy technology, through kind of full mirroring. There are other capabilities out there that allow you to more efficiently provide redundancy in your environment to protect your data. That allow you to get 50, 70% savings on your RAID protection. Also moving forward, compression and deduplication technologies. I would recommend people in this room and people on your teams to go start to look at deduplication technologies and compression technologies to help you continue to shrink down, to compress the amount of information or reduce the amount of disk that is required to store the same amount of records. One of the things that we do in my company is we think about deduplication as something that takes place over time as well as within a single space. So things, as we look at it over time, is as I add more information into my storage, are there ways that as I'm putting that information into my storage, as I'm backing it up, for example, that I'm not continuing to back up that same information again and again. So I've got 30 copies of the same data on all my backup tapes, for example, or all my drives, my backup for all my drives. So many companies out there are starting to do just backups of deltas, where you're just backing up information, the changes in your information. So that's one thing to think about. As things change over time, am I just storing the changes to my data over time as opposed to continuing to replicate storage of my information, my original information? So I've talked about availability and protection. I've talked about efficiency. I'm going to talk about data permanence in the sense of something called WORM, write once, read many technology. It's a requirement for many regulations out there, and it also, in terms of records retention, is starting to become more and more prominent. So within the context of a NetApp product, many companies have the ability to provide worm technology, which is taking an application and storing that information in a repository that allows it to be locked down so it can never be changed again. So this is a requirement for many different types of businesses. It's called worm, write once, read many, for people who aren't familiar with this terminology, and it's becoming absolutely critical. It is actually absolutely critical in many private sector regulations such as SEC 17A4. But we're starting to see it come up as a IT best practice for managing records and being able to demonstrate to regulatory authorities as well as legal teams and the courts that when those records were stored, it was impossible to ever change them again. And that's really what a lot of companies are starting to look for is, can I produce a document to the courts or to my auditors that says, once this was written, it never changed again? And technologies like SnapBlock, there's some other technologies out on the market today that allow you to do this. One interesting aspect of this is, back to Ted's point about retention policies and integration, is that products like this, as I mentioned, are integrated into Symantec's products and other players on the field, other players in the market. So you get this nice continuum where through the application, I can actually lock down the information on the storage device. Other vendors in the market actually provide this functionality as well. But it's another thing that you want to be able to make sure resides within your infrastructure.